Have you been to Epstein Island?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Ask a Psychologist podcast. Before this episode begins, I think it's important to say that some of the topics in this discussion are slightly dark, controversial, maybe a bit disturbing. Also, at a certain point during the episode, the microphone stopped recording, so the audio ended up being salvaged from a camera. It's not great, so I apologize for that. I've made sure that this issue will not come up in future episodes, but unfortunately, there is nothing I can do for this one. Either way, I hope my shortcomings won't stop you from enjoying this episode.
So my name is Francisco Gomez Jimenez. I'm a lecturer here in psychology at Brunel. I've been here for about 3 years, and my research mostly focuses on trying to understand sort of like the origins of sexuality and gender from an evolutionary perspective and from a cross-cultural perspective. So that's broadly, I would say, who I am and what I do.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the first questions that came to my mind was, what pulled you into this field? What made you interested in this field and wanted to make you study this field?
Well, I guess, I was originally a biology student as an undergraduate. I was always interested in behavior, so I wasn't sure what route to take. I guess my first thought was maybe to be a psychiatrist, because I didn't know what you could do with that. Either psychology, psychiatry. Those were my only two understandings of what you can do in studying behavior. But then, I took a course as a biology student. I took a course in evolution, and that just fueled me, gave me answers that I felt like I was seeking. And so from that, I had a desire to understand human behavior from an evolutionary perspective. And I guess in terms of why sexuality and gender, I've always wondered why people are the way that they are, why we have the gender roles that we have. Is it driven by biology? I guess that was my first thought, and partially that's why I did biology. And over time, I'm learning more about the role that society and culture plays into the way that we express our gender, our concepts of gender, even to sexuality. And so, I would say a mix of always being interested in behavior, taking an evolutionary course to sort of open my mind to those sort of questions, and just a genuine curiosity to where our behavior comes from.
That's interesting. So do you focus on gender more in the sort of social, or in general sex, not even gender, just the social part of it, or the more biological part of it?
Well, I guess nowadays I mostly I would say a little bit of both, but mostly social cultural influence to the way that we express our gender, the way that we express our sexuality. And so, for example, a lot of my research goes to non-Western cultures around the world. So right now, I'm mainly focusing in Mexico and Thailand, and specifically seeking out places where gender might be understood in a different way from how we understand it here. So in the society that I study in Mexico, southern Mexico in Oaxaca, there's this town, Juchitán de Zaragoza, and surrounding areas where the way that people understand gender is that there are men, there are women, but there's one third category, which is known as muxes. These are individuals who are biological males, who are attracted to the same sex, but who express themselves in a very feminine way. I guess it's what we would maybe call trans women, for example. But it's not just trans women. It could also be an individual's could be masculine presenting, but attracted to the same sex, so what we would call gay men. So in both cases, they would be called muxes. And a lot of my research focuses on studying this community and asking different types of questions that gets at potential biological indicators of sexuality that and to the extent that they might vary across cultures. So one example that I've been interested in, I haven't looked into this, is this idea of 2D/4D ratio, that there's the sex ratio, that they're different. And there's a lot of study that looks at sexual orientation 2D/4D ratio, and to the extent that males and females can be differentiated, but also individuals who are attracted to the same sex as opposed to the opposite sex. And so one way that I could look at biological influence on sexuality is looking at these like indicators of biological influence, because, more testosterone exposure is associated with a higher 2D/4D ratio. Is it higher? No, I'm forgetting.
What is the 2D/4D ratio? Because
of course, it's the ratio between your second and fourth digit. So
sort of like the middle finger and the pinky?
It would be this finger
Oh,
here,
the ring finger?
and
The pointer.
The pointer.
The index finger, yeah.
And so if the fourth digit, this one here, is longer than the second digit, that's supposed to be an indication of testosterone exposure during
I've heard of something like
prenatal
that.
development. So it's just like a proxy or like a way to assess biological influence indirectly. So that's one way I assess biology, but I also try to understand how things vary across cultures. And in other words, I assess the role of culture into, for example, how people understand gender, whether they conceive gender as being binary, non-binary, to the extent that culture influence who we have sexual relationships with and whatnot. So very broad.
A variety.
Yeah, sorry. That was a very long-winded answer.
Oh, no, that was very interesting. And I think one of the most interesting debates in this sort of area in general is gender. Does gender even exist? Is gender sort of a thing in the psychological sense? I mean, biologically, there are sort of more or less categories, I guess. You look at the female reproductive system, at the male reproductive, they're distinct.
Right.
But then you have people like intersex people.
Yeah.
And you have variation, obviously, among the binary. But in the psychological sense, is there a sort of sex? Is there a gender?
Well, I guess it depends on who you ask. It's a highly debated topic. And it also depends on what you mean by gender. There's certain elements of gender that are like highly socialized and obviously in no way biological. Like, for example, like to wear jeans, the decision to wear jeans or not, like maybe historically men were more likely to wear jeans in the past, but now it's certainly not the case. So that was something that was very gendered. It differentiated individuals who identify as men and individuals who identify as women at a certain point in time in a certain place, right? But it's not rooted in biology because, society dictates, right? Who is more likely to do that. In some societies, anybody can wear jeans. So it depends on what you mean. So there are other elements of gender that seem to be more, that seem to hold more across culture, across time. Just trying to think of an example. I guess one of the things that seems to be reliably to differentiate individuals who identify as men and women is this like idea of interest in systematizing versus empathizing types of activities or occupations. So, for example, this when I say systematizing, is like interest in, for example, types of jobs where you deal with machinery, equipment, being an engineer, a car mechanic. Those are more systematizing activities that are more commonly held by men on average compared to women.
Would you say commonly held or sort of interested in?
Well, both, but yeah, interested, I guess, in the main thing that we're discussing here. And on the other side, more empathizing types of occupations that are more to do with dealing with people, helping people, and that sort of thing. Like, for example, being a medical doctor, being a counselor, or a clinician, where you have to help people. Those types of activities are often of more interest to individuals who identify as women. And that seems to be very cross-culturally consistent and has been for like several decades now. And perhaps that's might be more rooted in biology than other aspects of gender. So I guess my point is like, it depends on what we mean by gender. There seem to be some aspects of gender that are more rooted in potentially biology.
But would you say that sort of, is it that people who are interested in this associate this with a certain gender and then identify as that gender, or that those people identify as that gender and then associate or are interested in that activity. So sort of, what is the first thing that causes the second?
It's the chicken or the egg. It's hard to say, right? But I guess you can look at it longitudinally and look at studies that have assessed interest from childhood. And some of those things seem to still hold, right? The difference in those interests. But you could have it both ways, I think. I think they both feed on each other. I guess it's some things are harder to assess, to understand where it comes first. But you could also do comparisons across species and see, I mean, obviously not for occupations, but like for other things like nurturing behavior, and to the extent to which that element of gender is coded in biology. So for example, there's some research that looks at non-human primates, and to the extent that which, if you present them with like human-like toys, whether it's like, what was the study? It was like a doll versus a
car?
Yeah, like a toy truck or something. And there's some studies have found like sex difference with female primates preferring or engaging or interacting more with dolls in comparison to the male non-human primates. But I think those have just been a few studies. But my point is that that's one way you could potentially assess a different way. You can collect different points of evidence to see, what the evidence tells you.
This has sort of caused two questions in me. I mean, the first one I think is, in general, transgender people are 1 in 100 about, right? So
these numbers are changing quite rapidly. Depends on what generation you're talking about.
Well, I believe it's a statistics I've heard a lot of scientists state that only about 1 in 100 people is trans. So I think it's fairly more or less safe to say that in 99% of people, their biological and their cognitive sex are probably the same. So I guess
I see what you're saying.
In that way, you could also say, oh, well, this is a woman and she's more interested in this. This is a man, he's more interested in this. And then you can conduct studies that way. But then you mentioned primates, and I was sort of interested. Do animals have a sort of, I guess, transgender issue? Or, I know animals can be gay or lesbian, but particularly when their cognitive and their bodily sex does not align, does that happen in animals?
I don't think we can actually say in the same way that we would with humans, of course, because we can't ask them. What we can say is to the extent to which they display same-sex behavior, and to the extent whether that's exclusive same-sex behavior. So we can't necessarily say, well, of course, we obviously can't use the same labels that we would use for humans, but we can say this individual, we've been observing it for years, every day, and they've only displayed exclusive same-sex sexual behavior, which suggests that among this species, among this individual, this group, whatever, it's possible to have same-sex sexuality or exclusive same-sex sexuality, which tends to be rare. The expression of same-sex sexual behavior is not uncommon within the animal kingdom among non-humans, but exclusive same-sex sexual behavior, it's something that's a bit rare. There's a couple species that do show it, for example. Not that I've studied this, but some colleagues of mine have, like Japanese macaques, which is a type of non-human primate. I believe killer whales are one example, which, if you didn't know, now you know. But in terms of the question regarding so that's sexuality, right? When it comes to gender, I wouldn't necessarily label it in the same way that we with our societies or humans. All we can tell is, we can study a given species and study what behaviors are more common among females, what behaviors are more common among males, and see when you see those roles flipped. Wouldn't necessarily call it transgender because we just can't ask this individual or. I mean, the best indication of whether somebody's transgender is just them saying that they're transgender, right? Other than like their gender behavior. So you can say there are animal species that might display sex atypical behavior, but I think that's to the extent that you can do that. There are also some species that are, that show like intersex characteristics as well, but I think that's sort of a different topic altogether. But you can see, just try to summarize. I feel like I'm rambling.
No, absolutely. You can go on as long as you want.
You can see sex atypical behavior in other species, and you can see exclusive same-sex sexuality. I wouldn't necessarily call that gay, lesbian, or trans. But maybe that's me as a scientist. That's what I
think that's the sort of terms we have for them as humans, and we just apply them to animals.
Yeah.
I believe giraffes are like 80% gay. Like there's some, I'm going to Google that before I spout some crazy statistic.
Not my
Over
specialty.
90% of all observed sexual and courting behaviors among male giraffes occur with other males. AI overview though, but
That would indicate they might be bisexual in their behavior.
possibly.
Not gay.
In general, I'm from a more conservative household. So
I mean, me too, but I'm from Puerto Rico.
whenever like someone starts talking about religion and then like, well, God didn't intend this one, I'm like, well, why are animals doing that? That's my sort of response. But
I see what you're saying. I don't know if that's always the best argument because there's all sorts of behaviors that you can see in animals. You can see infanticide. You can see other not so great things. So it's not always the best argument, but I see what you're saying. Like,
yeah,
you see it in nature, so it can exist. In humans as well.
It's just sort of that, they're saying this isn't natural. This isn't sort of how God intended it to be. If animals are doing it, I mean, it's at the very least, it's natural.
What I can say about this is that there does seem to be a biological influence on sexuality, same-sex sexuality, non-same-sex sexuality. There's perhaps the best indicators are studies that try to get at the genetics of it. So there's twin studies, for example, that show that, when you look at twins, both fraternal and identical twins, you can look at the extent to which they both share the same sex orientation. And let's say you're studying twins, and to the extent where one is gay or attracted to the same sex, the other one is as well. And then compare that between twins that are identical, that share all their genes, and twins that are fraternal, which share like 50% of the genes, but share the same like uterine environment. And when you do that, consistently what you see is that identical twins are more likely to share their sexual orientation compared to fraternal twins, and fraternal twins are more likely to share their sexual orientation compared to just regular siblings. Which indicates that there is sort of like a biological, heritable component to that. And then there's also like more specifically genetic studies that try to assess the genes, genetic regions. And those studies have also shown that there are certain genes or genetic regions that are associated with the expression of same-sex sexuality. So altogether, I would say there is good evidence to indicate that there is, to some extent, a heritable component to being gay, to being attracted to the same sex. There hasn't been a single study or studies that show like this is the gay gene, and like we've shown here it is, the gay gene. But that does seem to be a heritable component to it. And it's something that it's really interesting that happens when you tell people that the being gay, being lesbian does seem to be rooted in biology. There's some research that suggests that they're more likely to accept behaviors when they understand it as being biological. So I guess that's one perk to do in this type of research. Not always, but it seems to be more likely than not.
Right. Moving on, I had some sort of questions that I think are quite relevant to the current situation in the world. Is that how you'd put it? Sort of world. At the start, I asked you if you've been to Epstein Island. And, I mean, with this whole situation, there has been a staggering rise in sort of jokes about pedophilia.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I spend a lot of time on YouTube just browsing shorts, and I'll just see something about touching kids or some absolutely crazy stuff. And sometimes it's funny, but most of the time it's just capitalizing on a trend. And my question is sort of this whole, is this sort of desensitizing people to pedophilia? Is this causing harm? Is this bad in general? Just what is your opinion on this whole thing? Sort of.
Oh boy.
It's a difficult question.
Yeah. Well, I don't think those jokes are new. I remember hearing those types of jokes when I was a teenager as well, right? I will say I don't really use social media very much, so I don't know what's happening in the World Wide Web. But I don't know. I potentially, but I don't think it would necessarily lead to more of that behavior. Because if you're saying like, is it more like as in like using it to ridicule?
It's most of the videos that I watch, they're not really ridiculing it. They're just kind of poking a joke or something.
Okay.
And most of the time, I mean, I'm trying to think of like a joke that I can say, but most of them are most of them aren't funny enough to be remembered. It's just because it's trendy, it's sort of funny, like, haha, touching kids.
Yeah.
Some dumb like that. Yeah. But I would say that they're not really ridiculing them. And a lot of people have criticized it because they're saying they want
Yeah, sure.
They want you to laugh at these jokes. They want you to see this. They want you to sort of be desensitized to it. And in this way, they will sort of normalize it, you know?
Couldn't I counter argue that in doing so, people are more willing to have serious conversations about the subject rather than treating it as a taboo? And, you know, and in talking about it more seriously, you can sort of think about ways to prevent it.
I mean, I'd say
no.
You're not wrong, but I'd honestly prefer if pedophilia remains sort of taboo. Not in the sense of a discussion, but sort of as a concept in general.
Yeah.
But I see your point. Yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah, because I mean, like, one would hope that with everything, all the scandals that's been happening, one of the reactions is, you know, for like people who are in law or who are in the government to take it more seriously, right? And like to help to find ways to prevent, you know, that from happening. And on a sort of tangent there, you know, in one of the things I teach here at Brunel is this course on human sexuality. And so we talk about all sorts of sexuality, whether they're a taboo or not. And so one of the things that we talk about is this concept of chronophilia, so which is specifically sexual arousal to a particular age category. And so we don't really have a chronophilia. Usually it aligns with whatever your age is, right? If, you know, how old are you?
I'm 20, like
20 something.
I'm 20. I don't know why I said 20 something or something. I'm 20.
So 20. So usually, like, people would be attracted usually with people around their same age. So if you're 20, so around 20, 18, 22, maybe older. I'm 30. Oh God, how old am I?
You don't have to say.
No, just forget. 33. So, you know, I'm usually attracted to people who are in their 30s. So, and so on and so forth, right? People are, even like when you're a teenager, you're attracted to teenager, right? And that would be like a hebephile or phoebophile. and people, I mean, and then there's this concept of pedophilia, which people believe to be anything below the, what would it be, like 18. Right, that's what people think about.
I've like, as when I just turned 18, I had a lot of, so I have a friend group, right? And like, they're like, I'm the second or like third oldest.
Okay.
So when I turned 18, everybody just started calling me a pedophile because I speak to minors.
No.
And I'm like, dude, I'm like a year older than you.
Yeah, just by a couple of days or something. But that's at least like if you look at what pedophilia is technically, it's sexual attraction to prepubescent youth. So that would be like people who are under a particular category. They're not teenagers; they're before teenagers. So below the age of like 11 or something, below the age of 12. That technically is what pedophilia is. Whereas sexual attraction to 12 to 15, I always confuse it, but ephebophilia and hebephilia, those are sexual attraction between...
How many philias are there?
There are all sorts of philias. It's endless.
I'm scared now. I've only heard of...
If you can think of something, there is a philia. I mean, philia just means attraction to.
I mean,
like,
that I'm aware of. I know there's like necrophilia, zoophilia.
But even androphilia, sexual attraction to males, gynophilia, sexual attraction to females, ambiphilia, sexual attraction to both sexes. It gets more complicated. What was that? Autogynephilia. That one's a controversial one.
Attraction to self or something?
Attraction to yourself as a woman. And so that is this idea that some individuals who are trans are attracted to the ideas of themselves as the other sex. Somewhat controversial, just letting you know. But yeah, there's all sorts of
so
philia.
many. I'm just terrified at this point. But all right, let's stay on topic.
Sorry, right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just to go back to your controversial question.
We went from controversial topic to controversial question.
Hard to avoid it when you're talking about sexuality.
Yeah.
I guess my point was that there's these people who call themselves virtuous pedophiles, which are people who recognize that they're sexually attracted to prepubescent youth, but would never act on it. And so I'm like, every time I teach this in my class, I can see like all the students like, oh God, like,
I mean,
going inwards, but like, it makes sense, right? Because it's just like,
I am aware that sexual attraction often is unwilling. So if they understand that it's wrong and that they shouldn't act on it, then I, in a way, have respect for them. It's still a bit icky.
yeah.
But I respect that they understand what they're kind of doing and that they're pulling themselves back.
Well, one of the things we discuss in class is whether or not like we should be talking about it more. Because I remember like with some of my students, I've heard that multiple times, say like, well, if we sort of like normalize this idea of virtuous pedophiles, then you're less guarded against possible, child abuse. So it's I just bring it up so so my students can sort of think about all the complexity that goes with some of these things. And I guess to answer your question, I'm all in favor like talking about things and discussing it. So if one of the outcomes of that is just to people to talk about it more, try to understand it more, and maybe if that leads to less child abuse, then I think that's a good thing. I don't know if that's what would happen by making jokes about it, but I guess maybe I'm just being optimistic.
Another sort of controversial-ish question. I don't think it's as controversial. It's if society right now is sort of too sexual in the sense that, back in the 50s, people were almost too kind of...
shrewd? I don't know what the word is.
I don't know what the word is either. It's like they didn't... complete taboo on sex.
Yeah.
But then now we've swung the pendulum in the complete opposite direction, and it's like sex is everywhere. It's in the ads, in movies. There's like plenty of jokes about sex. Sex is basically the be all and end all conversation, I guess. And in that way, do you think we're talking about it too much, or maybe we're not talking about it enough? Do you think that there are certain things that should be talked about more, certain things that should be talked about less? Kind of, what is your take on this?
Well, I think there's a difference between talking about it, and sort of like displaying certain sexual acts, or I don't know, peacocking or whatever. But I think, you're asking somebody whose life is focused on understanding and doing research on sexuality. So I'm all for like talking more about it, but regarding as to whether we should, be displaying it more and talking about it more, I don't know, man. I don't know what to say. That's a personal. I feel like everybody who has their own opinions on it, and I'm just one other person who has my own opinions.
I mean, that's true, but do you, as a sort of psychologist, do you see like any downsides of discussing it, displaying it? Do you see any benefits of doing it, or etc.? Like, what are the psychological impacts of sort of?
Well, I think there can be positives, because the more you talk about it, the more people can discover things about themselves that maybe they didn't realize, or maybe they start to feel more comfortable with their own sexuality, and start realizing that other people share similar interests, similar sexuality. And I think that's ultimately what has led to, like, in some ways, greater acceptance towards sexual minorities, because people are more willing to talk about it. But you can also have negatives to it, of course. I'm trying to think of something. I'm sure there is. Do you have some examples?
I mean, one of the things I can think of is someone who has trauma related to this, and they can get really triggered.
Sure. Yeah, no, I guess in those type of situations, I think talking about it is good, but in controlled environments, right? Where like you have freedom to talk about it when you want and how you want it. Well, hopefully with like a therapist or among accepting friends or something. But I guess another element to that is sexual, permissiveness, or like sexual, some people are uncomfortable with seeing other people being like showing a lot of skin, or like being very sexually positive, right? I think that's just like a cultural thing, and not necessarily at a societal level. It can be that as well, but like at an individual level as well. I feel like I'd rather not say anything on that topic.
That's true. Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
That's
fair.
For each person to decide.
The reason I said this was because so recently I decided to watch a show, and the show just had like a lot of nudity.
Yeah.
And I was just really kind of dumbfounded.
Yeah.
Because I usually watch shows that they might have sex, but they're pretty tame. And this one was just very open with it, very casual with it. And it just kind of was weird for me.
Sure.
And I was wondering, like, how would someone who is either very uncomfortable with this, or how would someone who potentially, again, has trauma, because I have a sort of friend who's had trauma regarding this, and how would someone like that react?
Yes.
Could this be a downside? Like, could a person who doesn't like this or isn't able to watch this, would that person not enjoy the show? Things like that. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And I mean, as I was saying, it can also happen in ads. So you could be watching a sporting event, and then, the 50-minute ad break, like the World Cup right now.
Yeah.
How long's the ad break? 15 minutes? Okay. It'll show up one ad, and you're kind of put off by it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's my main reason. I do see why it's also beneficial on one point, because I guess it makes people more open to it. Yeah, it makes people more comfortable with it. I mean, in a lot of Europe in general. Yeah. I had this conversation a couple days ago. In Europe in general, nudity is a lot more. They're more open about it. They're more accepting of their bodies. But in sort of, I mean, in England here, in more Eastern Europe where I'm from, in Canada and America, they're kind of more closed about it. So
Sure.
I'm just wondering what would be the best solution. Obviously, I don't think this is for us to discuss, but
Sure.
I'm just kind of talking about why.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very certainly interesting observation, and I think what you're saying sort of highlights how variable it is, right? How much it varies across cultures, and I don't think there's a right way to go about it because it's just like a subjective thing. Um, you can think about it as art, right? If you look at, I don't know, well,
Greek statues.
yeah, Greek statues. So it's just if you look at, architecture or statues around Europe, you see a lot of nudity, right? And like you can see it as something beautiful, like a piece of art, or you can see it as something that's like, yeah, right. So it's all in the eyes of the beholder, I suppose. But
I guess.
I think it's something that's very subjective, and I don't think there ever is going to be a right way to go about it. It's just like whatever is the cultural zeitgeist, I guess, the understanding about the majority understanding about what the right thing to do is. What I see that's interesting to me, and like what predicts those attitudes, like what makes one culture more likely to be accepting and another culture less likely to be accepting. Those are the types of things that I would be curious to study and do research about, like what elements of a culture is more like to make it so that like people are a bit more conservative or more conserved in their sexual expressiveness. Because I think that has some overlap with certainly the things that I do research on. Because it relates also to gender expression as well. So I'm spinning it around, making it a conversation about my research. Sorry.
Yeah, that's actually. I wanted to go there because honestly, I've run out of my own kind of. Those were the two main questions I had, but I do want to hear more about your research, about your studies. I mean, this is the point of the interview. You get to talk about the stuff you do.
Sure.
So I was sort of throughout history, I've heard that there were cultures that were accepting of gay, lesbian, just they were accepting of gender as a sort of what's the word? Spectrum. Yeah. They didn't view it as a binary, and I was interested to hear more about that from you.
Yeah.
And sort of how did those cultures come to it? What came of it?
Yeah.
I guess how we ended up kind of where we are now.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with somebody about this today. I think there's, unless there's like a written record of it, it's hard for us to say what a culture was like, whether your concept of gender were binary or not. What we can say is, the information we have of it, and that is for the most part across culture, people's understanding of gender is quite binary, right? Perhaps it makes sense, given that most people, as you said earlier, are cisgender, right? Their gender, their biological sex typically aligns, right? And maybe perhaps because of that, the common understanding of genders is binary. But you do see exceptions. Like I mentioned earlier, I studied these two cultures, one in Mexico, one in Taiwan, where their understanding of gender is not binary. So in the one in Mexico, there's this idea of a third gender. But interestingly, only for, at least thus far.
For men?
Yes. Or for individuals who are male at birth. Whereas female, if it was like an F to N, like female to male, that is more controversial. Maybe not as accepted. There's like a fourth category equivalent to it. Not in the same extent that it is for the wuxes, but in this other culture that I study in Taiwan, that's not the case. It's like even more diverse because you have men, you have women, but you also have these individuals known as Sao-Prapek-Song, which is Thai for a second type of woman, or you have individuals who are toms. And I think that comes from like tomboy. So these are individuals male birth, female birth, but are more masculine gender expressions of trans.
They trans are more just like lesbians because I think lesbians are also kind of more.
Male typical.
Yeah.
Yeah. So toms would be more equivalent to what we would call trans men. Not necessarily the same thing. It's like culturally specific, but might also like do like surgeries to sort of modify their body to be more similar to that of a male. And so, but these are modern societies. Now, if the question is about how it was ancestrally, it's hard to say, right? Because if we don't have records for it, we can't say one way or another. But one thing I have seen, at least for Mexico, which is where I've done most of my research, I remember reading his records from like the Spanish conquistadors when they arrived in what we now call Mexico. And one of the scribes was writing about, describing the people there. And this is like Veracruz, so not exactly Oaxaca. So it's like north of Oaxaca. They were describing individuals or males with long hairs who, in their words, committed sodomy, which is religious for like these are like a negative connotation to like gay sex. But essentially describing what seems to be individuals who are male birth, attracted to the same sex, and feminine gender expression. So probably what we would call now like a trans individual. And we're talking about the 1500s here. So this idea of trans, or this idea of somebody who is displaying behavior that's not typical of their sex is certainly not theory. And we see similar types of records across cultures. Whether or not that meant that the culture itself saw it as gender, well, even thought about gender, and thought about it, if they did, as non-binary, I don't know. Possible. But what we can say is that same-sex sexuality and transgenderism, or being trans, expressing oneself as trans, doesn't seem to be a novel cultural thing.
I was gonna ask sort of how this even began, but I think a better question would be why does, from an evolutionary standpoint, why do gay, trans, lesbian people sort of exist? Because if you're looking at just what's the most efficient, what's the best, male, female, you have it, offspring, that's easy. Or, I mean, technically evolutionary would be even easier if one pair could reproduce by himself, but
like asexual reproduction.
yeah. But in this case, if we're looking just at two, then why would gay people exist?
Yeah.
And even more interestingly, if we're looking at evolution, you would think that by sort of natural selection, gay people and lesbian would disappear.
Right.
You've mentioned that there's not like a gay gene or something, or a lesbian gene, so it's not like it can really be passed down. So how do they appear, and how does this whole thing work?
Yeah, well, I dedicated the last 10 years to answering that question. I wish I had a definite answer. Maybe before I die, I will. Not now. But I have hypotheses that I've been testing out, and some of them seem better than others. So just to go back to what you're saying about the gene, there does seem to be a heritable component to it. Perhaps genes, or maybe even epigenetic factors, does influence or lead to the expression of same-sex sexuality. It's just that what I was saying earlier is just like people having the geneticists and people who do this research haven't pinpointed them. There's this one gene. It's more likely to be several genes that in combination increase the probability of same-sex sexuality, or potentially epigenetic factors, which hasn't really been studied that much. But regarding how it evolves, you're right. There is what one would call the evolutionary paradox of same-sex sexuality. This idea that, well, if it's genetic, how are those genes being passed down from generation to generation? Because same-sex attracted individuals are not likely to engage in sex that leads to reproduction, right? And there are several hypotheses. One is that these same genes that are likely to make somebody, let's say, gay in one sex, when person of the other sex somehow, in one way or another, increases their fitness. Not like fitness in that sense, but evolutionary fitness. So the number of children, their extent to which they survive, but specifically the number of children. So perhaps increases their fertility. There is some evidence to that. For example, there's studies that show that the relatives of gay men, say, tend to have more children on average, but the evidence is somewhat mixed for that. There's another hypothesis, which I've tested several times now. It's called the kin selection hypothesis. And it's based on this idea that, well, these individuals are not going to reproduce themselves, but they can increase what's known as their indirect fitness. So, and they can do that by one way or another ensuring the survival of, say, nieces and nephews, or helping with their siblings to raise their children. And that frees up resources to have even more children potentially, or so that their children are better off for it. And so one way to test this is, well, there's multiple ways to test this, but one way to test this is to sort of assess to the extent to which these individuals, with gay men, the mushes talked about earlier, are willing to help out with rearing nieces and nephews, or to assess to the extent that they actually help by asking their brothers or sisters. One thing that we found is that these mushes, they do seem to be more willing to take care of their nieces and nephews, and their sisters report that they actually do that. That's not just something that they say they do. There is some evidence to indicate that they actually do help more. So it's sort of like this idea of like a helper-linist, and that frees up resources for that individual. And so what we get out of that is maybe that gene isn't being transmitted linearly, but if it's genetic, you share 50% of your genes with your brother and sister, and you share about 25% of your genes with your nieces and nephews. So if you're either a sister or your niece and nephews have those genes, then ensuring their survival, ensuring that they're healthy, can indirectly facilitate the transmission of those genes. Indirectly.
So essentially, gay and lesbian people are sort of helpers. Well, evolutionary.
Yeah. There's more evidence for that in terms of male individuals, individuals who are male birth, so gay men, mushes, for example, trans women, them for lesbians and trans men. Potentially because there might need to be different hypotheses to explain female and same-sex sexuality compared to male same-sex sexuality. Potentially.
Are the rates for lesbians and gay and lesbian women and gay men about the same? I think it's about 1 in 10 people.
So that's one of the things I teach in my class, and I try to update the numbers every year. Every year it's like a bit different. So I guess you're Gen Z, right?
I'm Gen Z.
So I was looking at some data from the UK, looking at like millennials, Gen Z, and it seems, if I remember correctly, that for Gen Z, for people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans, plus that's like a very wide category, it was about like 20%. That's quite, for people who participate in like census, stuff like that. So, whereas compared to my generation, it's a bit lower. But that didn't answer your question. You're asking about gay men and lesbian women.
I'm just thinking of the stat you said. Technically, if we divide that in half, that being
So yeah, like 10%.
yeah, it would be 10% each. But then I guess if you're counting them together, then the statistics can be mixed in.
Yeah. Well, with respect to like gay men and lesbian women, there historically were more gay men than lesbian women, or more bisexual women than I think all of it combined. So among females, bisexuality seems to historically been more common than be a lesbian, whereas among males, historically, gay men were more common than bisexual men. Bisexuality of men has become more common, but I think, if I remember correctly, gay men are still more common than bisexual men. And bisexual women are the biggest category within the LGBT plus.
My sister once said something along the lines of, "I understand why a woman can like a woman because they're pretty." She's straight, but she was like, "I can understand lesbians."
Ouch, men can be pretty too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But yeah, that did kind of hurt my feelings because I'm like, ouch.
But yeah, it's sorry.
I'm not free.
Yeah, you're saying?
Oh, wait, say we're handsome.
Yeah, I feel like
That's why I might tell what I tell myself when I look in the mirror.
Actually, this is another one. Are straight men a bit too afraid of being called gay? Because I feel like, I mean, it's like, again, I'm going to pull up the example of YouTube Shorts, but it's like, I'm sitting cross-legged, and like, I remember watching videos and they would be like, sitting straight, put a leg up over their thing, and then like, loud, echoey voice, gay. Or like, they would, I don't know, it's carrying the bag for mom and putting it down. It's like, gay.
It's interesting to see nothing has changed the past 20 years.
yeah,
That's exactly what teenage years were like. It's interesting because that like gets at like gender norms and the extent to which it's enforced among men and women. This is not. This is something I'm starting to study. I haven't studied it directly yet, but it's just reading the research and talking to some colleagues, looking at different cultures. It seems that there tends to be a bit more permissiveness. I think I'm not 100% sure about this, but when women are somewhat gender non-conforming, that's why there's this whole idea of the tomboy. Oh, it's just a phase, whatever. Which not always the case, of course, but at least, modern society, there seems to be, I'd say modern society, I meant me growing up back in the Stone Ages.
it's not that long.
about what?
No, I was 193.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Well, it's last millennium. Yeah, like there was more freedom, I think, for women to sort of explore and be somewhat gender non-conforming as long as they weren't like completely on the other side, like trans or, well, I guess gender non-binary as well. Then it's like more frowned upon. But for men, it seems to be a thing. Again, I'm not 100% sure, but there seems to be more enforcing of gender norms. There's this idea of fragile masculinity, right? I think there's a proper term, scientific term for it. But this idea, this masculinity is hard to earn and easy to lose. And so there's this hypothesis that you always have to prove how masculine you are, otherwise you lose the masculinity status. I mean, like,
Evolutionarily, that's probably, looking at the animal kingdom, most of the leaders are male. Most of the time, there are some, I am aware of some sort of primates where female are leaders, but most of the time, especially, right now I'm thinking of lions. The male lion is kind of the leader. So oftentimes what happens evolutionarily is, the males are competing for the females.
yeah.
So as if we apply that to us, we would be sort of competing to be more masculine.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's wrong, but I don't know if it's true.
In the sense of humans, or
It's just like across the animal kingdom. I mean, there's certainly, I think of, there's examples where you see like females being important as well, like elephants.
no, of course. I'm not saying.
I don't know enough about this to say what is more common or not. Perhaps you're right, but yeah, sorry, what was it?
I was just wondering if that's maybe why men are so afraid of kind of not being masculine, super strong.
Well, if anything, I would say it might have to do more with just human mating and how we understand it thus far. You know, this idea of intersexual competition, where you have to sort of show off what is literally peacocking, right? Like showing off your feathers, showing that you are whatever it is that you need to be in order to impress a partner. Maybe that's what it is. And if what gets you a partner is this idea of feeling more masculine, whatever that happens to be at a given time and place, then you're more likely to try to like enact that whichever way possible.
What's funny is that I see not all women, but a lot of women are much more accepting of men that are less masculine. Men that can show emotion, that can be sort of caring, that really just show emotion. That's kind of the thing, because a lot of masculinity is kind of keeping those emotions in control, not crying ever or anything like that.
Stoic.
Yeah, and a lot of women, not all, but I want to say majority. I don't know. I don't have data on this, but I think a majority are much more willing for men to be sort of more open with their emotions and much more accepting. So a lot of the reinforcing of being a man is done by men. And
you're probably right. I think it's more. Sorry, I finished.
no, I was just thinking that I'm pretty sure that's also with women, that a lot of sort of the reinforcing of
The norms.
female gender roles and also done with women.
Yeah, it seems like the people of your own gender police the norms of the same gender quite often. I think you'd see both. Definitely. I guess in my experience, I'm not talking about research, but in my experience, that's probably more true. Not that I've seen more men telling me what to do than women. But maybe, I guess, maybe when it comes to like female policing gender norms among men, it's not as direct. Maybe it is more through mating and being successful in the mating landscape or not. Maybe. But also, like what you said earlier regarding, like nowadays, it seems to be more accepting of like less macho culture or what to call it. Perhaps you're right, but I do think it's very cultural and very social. Whether or not whether or not men and women are looking for gender typical partners, and whatever that gender typicality is also it fluctuates with time quite a lot.
Yeah, what I was one of the ways I think women can also, I guess, police masculinity, height, and then G6, but I've seen like videos also, like they'll ask a woman, does a man have to be tall, like over 6 foot? And then they'll bring up a scale and be like, okay, please step on the scale, I see your weight. Sort of getting back up.
Sure, I'm sure one could flip it around some way.
That is one way to flip it around. But
yeah, it's interesting. Some elements of that seem to be more cross culturally consistent, like that. What you're saying does seem to be.
that women like taller men?
I think so, regardless of culture. Not like on average. I'm not saying all women, but not necessarily X feet tall, but taller than me.
Oh yeah,
Seems to be something that's cross cultural.
I think it also older in general. I think.
Yeah,
Most I rarely see a couple where like the woman is older than the man. I do know of some couples.
Some mom's older.
Yeah, but like for me, my dad is like 9 years older than my mom.
Yeah.
So
But you're right. Like if you look at the research and look at like review studies and meta-analysis, meta-synthesis, that sort of like try to collect all the data from different studies. One of the most consistent sex differences when it comes to me is age differences, with men preferring slightly younger partners compared to themselves, and women preferring same age or slightly older partners compared to themselves. And that's something that the difference seems to get bigger over time.
I think this could be, again, linked to evolutionary in the sense that women get menopause. And then it's not really that their reproductive system stops, it's just that their quality of sperm kind of deteriorates.
With age, yeah, that's true.
Well,
But there's still the possibility, right, that they can.
Yes. Yeah, so that's, I think that can also cause a sort of...
Yeah. Yeah, that's the explanation. That's the explanation that's given for sex differences in age preference.
And I want to return to this, but I also want to return to the conversation beforehand for a second. So what's interesting about the sort of gay thing, right? Calling a straight man gay, is that it's only applied to straight people. So my friend group, if I'm talking about just the guys, we're all straight, but we have sort of outside friend groups that we know. And sometimes most of them are online. Like most of my friends are online. So when in another friend group, I believe there's one or two gay people. And to them, the gay joke never applies. But sometimes they'll use the gay joke against the straight dudes. So I think that's what's the most interesting is that if someone knows you're gay, yeah, okay, that's fine. But if you're not gay and you're straight, now you gotta be super straight, right? So you're either gay or you're either super straight, nothing in between, right? And it's a really interesting...
Yeah. And actually, that I think has had influence on why bisexuality in men hasn't been very common over the years, or not. It wasn't common back in the day. Now it's become more and more common because we see that both straight men and gay men historically have that wouldn't be the right word.
Reinforcement from their peers?
Well, when it comes to bisexual men, I guess that either peer pressure, I'm forgetting the right term, but pressuring them or policing them or just discrimination potentially. That you can't be bisexual. You have to, what you were saying.
Yeah. Gay or straight?
Gay or straight. I know I think there's a research article or something that once was called Gay, Straight, or Line. Because you have to when you look at the research, for a long time there wasn't clear-cut evidence that bisexuality in men was as common as bisexuality in women. Now more recent studies does show with more finer tools, better tools, yes, bisexuality is common among men. But my point is that, for whatever reason, it's something that just for men thinking about other men, they just can't see it in this in-between areas, one way or the other.
It's funny. This has almost nothing, well, it has something to do with the conversation, but it's a sort of meme I saw not so long ago that kind of applies to what we're talking about here. Give me a sec. Right. If an individual has never tried broccoli and another has tried it once and both say, I do not like broccoli, who has a more valid claim? In this essay, I'll explain why it is more straight to a dude in the ass once than not at all. So the conversation about how straight something is really implying to everything.
Oh, I've never thought about it that way, I guess. Where did you get that from?
Philosophy. I just saw it on. I'm telling you, YouTube Shorts is a minefield.
Yeah, internet's a wild place.
Yeah. Anyways, returning back to what we were talking to again. I was thinking about what is the most sexually attractive kind of appearances or even, I guess, traits in a person. We were talking about the age gaps and the height.
Yeah.
So what other factors are there that are really important in this sense?
What, are you looking for pointers? Or?
Maybe. No, I'm just interested because I think
so
the audience might be interested. Maybe they're looking for pointers.
So what are you asking specifically? Like, what do you mean?
Well, let's say for, I guess, men.
Yeah.
Because I think on the internet it's pretty easy to find what women view as the most attractive things in men, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's as easy to find what men view as the most attractive or one attractive things in women. So, okay, just in that case.
Okay. Well, I'm going to segue back to myself. I guess narcissist. That's absolutely fine. We're all some narcissists. I actually just did a study that sort of looks into this, looking at mate choice preferences, what people look for in a partner. This specific study was conducted in Thailand because a lot of the research that exists on that subject has been conducted in Western cultures and mostly on cisgender heterosexual people, which is of course not an issue. But I was curious to see what if we go to totally different culture, and what do we look at these things among like sexually and gender diverse people. But I also interviewed men and women as part of the study. So I had men, women, I had gay men, and I had these individuals who are called sapapetsong, which are like comparable to trans women, not quite the same, but comparable. Right. And I specifically was asking for a long-term partner. So if you're looking for
Similarities.
yeah. But if the question was about if your question was about how to get a hookup, I can't help you there. But
I think most people are not interested in that. They want
sure. But yeah, going back to the question specifically was looking for a long-term partner. So somebody you can marry, somebody you can have a long-term relationship with. And so one of the ways I did this is like I had one list of traits, right? I had like 70 or 80 in total. Look at a whole bunch of things. Like, do you look for somebody who wants children, who likes children, good finance, who has good looks, who is charming, who's like a whole bunch of things, right? Who's funny. And then I looked at
He's like in a sort of agree very strongly, you disagree very strongly, or is it like a yes or no?
it was this sort of scale. How important is this when looking for a partner, a long-term partner? And so they rated each one of them. And so I, collected that data and then I analyzed it. And one of the things I did, there's different ways to analyze it, but one of the things I did is like I sorted them by what is the number one for women, I listed them in order, sorted them in order from the most important based on the average to the least important for women, the men, for gay men, and for the South Belt. Before I tell you, what do you think?
For one or for
Both. Or let's just focus on men strictly.
Okay. This thing's trying to kill me.
They talk about height a lot. So, that's my first thought, but I don't think that's actually. Because most women, I don't think they look for something physical. I think men, a lot of the time, are looking for something more physical, but women, they're looking for. Oh, God, maybe. I would need to see the 80 options, but I would say it's something to do with maybe being. What's the word? I forgot the word. Like being bilingual is such a pain. Trilingual is such a pain because sometimes you'll just forget a word and you remember it in another language. Responsible. Being responsible.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's sort of for women. For men. Actually, do you want to answer it?
Wait,
That's for women.
Oh, okay. We'll clarify that for me. You said looks or no?
I didn't quite say. I said it's probably something about looks. But did you have specific features?
Well, yeah, I had. Well, not. I had just like looks. Well, I had one that's attractiveness. I had one that's like sexy or erotic.
I feel like if you put like boobs and butt, that would be like among the five.
Physical characteristics, right?
Yeah.
When I started that way, and I looked at the top traits, they're actually quite comparable for men, women, gay men, sapapetsong. And those were things like faithful, responsible, as you said earlier. Actually, that was literally one of them. Honest and the kind. Those like were within the top 5 or 10.
It's more personality traits.
Yeah, or like essentially, you want people, regardless of gender, or sex, or sexual orientation, they want somebody who you could trust, somebody who you can like feel comfortable around, somebody you can be yourself or be honest with, right? And yeah, like I said, that was regardless of gender, sex, sexual orientation, which was interesting to find, perhaps not surprising. That said, however, there were other small but still differences, because if you looked at things that are associated with attraction, looks, physicality, everybody cared about that, but men cared more about that. It wasn't the top trait, because I said earlier, like the top traits was like finding comparable. Yeah. But it was deemed more important among men and women. And one thing I was expecting to see, just based on the literature, is like resources, maybe more common among preference for resources might have been more common among women. That's what's something I was expecting to see, just based on previous studies. But based on my sample and in this particular culture, I didn't find a difference there between men, which was
That's really interesting. I mean, I was fairly certain that things like being respectful and like faithful and all that would be pretty high in both. But I was thinking men would have like attractiveness in the sort of top.
yeah. And we had top, but it was certainly higher than what it was for the women.
It's like if you know the position, like where was it? Maybe I forget. Like top 20, top 10.
It was certainly in the top 20s for sure.
So it's still quite lower than I was. I was expecting maybe like top 5, maybe top 10. But
Yeah, I mean the difference between the ones in the top were minuscule. So like to say like number 1 and number 10 were like very close. But yeah, that was one way of assessing. It's like me giving you a list of things, as opposed to me asking you like what's the first thing that comes to mind. I did that too. A lot of it was like more very simple. Well, actually, if you're asking gay men, that's stuff.
actually, are gay men like straight men in the sense that they care about a lot about
Yeah. So one thing I found is that individuals male at birth, regardless of whether they're straight men or gay men or the three of them cared more about looks than women. So it seems just to be a male. Based on my research. Not that the women didn't care, it's just they didn't care as much compared to straight men. It's very interesting. And I think it all goes back to maybe this, distinction between reproduction and how it functions in males and females. At least that's like a potential biological explanation.
Another sort of interesting thing that I know is that sort of gym culture, right? Men, they're so into like getting like big bodies, being strong. And then there was a study, or not even a study, just people walking up to other people on the road and kind of showing them pictures of sort of men torsos. Whoa. And the woman would kind of pick out which they thought was the most attractive.
Yeah.
And it was like much smaller
Than what
than
they picked.
than what the men picked as the most attractive. Like they thought the bigger you are, like if you're I don't know, big bodybuilders, I know Arnold Schwarzenegger, he is like massive, and obviously he's I mean I wouldn't call attractive, but I'll certainly like wow,
Yeah.
But to women, that was like just too much, as they said. They didn't want like super strong. They even preferred dad bods
Yeah.
to sort of super muscular. And the men were like so angry. They were like, the women are lying. They're saying bullshit. They don't want the men to succeed. Shit like that. And it's like so funny because like you just can't accept that you wasted. Well, you're more attracted to men, I guess. So I guess that does align with the fact that women don't really care about attractiveness as much.
I wouldn't say bad.
I mean, that
They would, but
yeah, not that they don't. That just that sort of how you look.
yeah.
You know, they focus more on what's on the inside, and that's a
Well,
lot of the time what I heard.
there's this other idea within like evolutionary psychology that what you look for depends on the ways that you're seeking out. So, for example, my research question was focused on
Sorry. What you look for is what you're seeking out.
that's in terms of like, if you're looking for a long-term partner, you seek out certain traits.
Okay.
A short-term partner,
Yeah, because that was kind of like what you're looking for. You're looking for. That's fine. Yeah, I just confused.
But yeah, like my research question was focused on a long-term partner. And so maybe if I was asking about short-term partner, like a hookup, maybe the differences in physical attractiveness wouldn't have been so big in a study. And there's this hypothesis that that changes your mating preferences. And there is even some hypothesis that says that I don't know if there's actually good evidence for it. It's this idea of dual mating strategies among women that it depends on what they're looking for, or like whether or not they're the period in your cycle, like whether they're ovulating or not. I mean, there is some research that suggests that sexual desire increases around ovulation, and other things also increase around ovulation, like what was it? Sexual desire, their self-esteem, and other things. But even interest in specific characteristics, like physical characteristics in the partner. There's some studies that have looked at that. I can't remember if it's like consistent evidence that if there is these dual mating strategies. So, for example, and when you're looking to have short-term partners, they look for somebody who is more the stereotypical like masculine, rough individuals, whereas where they're a long-term partner who can help them raise kids, they're looking for somebody who's like more stable, financially well off, is more willing to help with child rearing. So that idea that depending on what it is that they're looking for, or whether they're like seeking to reproduce or seeking to help find somebody to help raise a child, they might be looking for different strategies. I don't remember if there's good evidence for that. Maybe not, actually. I think it's quite mixed. But it is an idea. It is an idea that has been tested that suggests that it's not that women don't care about that, but maybe it's contextual. Like it depends on various other factors. And so that's a lot. Do with that what you will, I guess.
Not sure what I will.
I wish I had like a better memory of whether like that was more whether that's well supported. But all I remember last time I read about is like the evidence of one X, which is good evidence for that.
Well, you mentioned memory. Our previous interview was on memory, so go watch that. She was fun. Easiest plug of my life.
Do it.
Yeah. I don't even know where to start the conversation. We've just gone through so much that,
Yeah.
I mean, is there something in particular you want to talk about? One of the questions I constantly ask is sort of, are there any misconceptions about your field, in your field? Any myths that sort of have caught on, hadn't been debunked, sort of things like that? Do you have anything like that?
I'm sure there is. I'm trying to think if there's any other comes to mind. I guess the biggest misconception that I see, it's not even my field. And well, I guess it is maybe this is just me. I don't know. But and because of what I do research on and what I study, I find that people often sort of mix sex and gender quite often.
Oh yeah.
Sex, gender, sexual orientation. Partially perhaps because of this idea that it's all social constructed anyways. I disagree. As you know, we were talking at the beginning of this conversation. I do think that there's elements of gender that are more biological, which perhaps maybe should do a little more sex. Because so in my mind, and I think for me, it's very important for me to have this distinction between this idea of sex, this idea of gender, this idea of sexual orientation or sexuality, because these are things that I'm interested in studying and understanding where it comes from. So I do need to have very specific definitions of those things and be able to sort of like tease those things apart. So for me, it's very important to make those distinction about sex as something that is more, I guess biological, something that's defines your sexual characteristics, your genes, your chromosome, or your genitalia, secondary sexual characteristics. And then there's gender, which is often aligned with sex, but not always, which is more about the external projection of it's neurological. Well, that's another conversation to have, right? If gender behavior is partially wired in the brain, then yeah, is it biological or not? Can you have a different brain in a male typical brain or female in the female body?
That's actually what I heard from. I mean, I didn't watch that many videos on this topic, but the videos that I did watch, they covered sort of what you were saying, sex, biological, sort of sexual or kind of attractiveness or sexuality. It's kind of who you're attracted to, regardless of your sex.
Yeah.
And then gender is what not sex, but kind of who you perceive yourself as, and it's cognitive, neurological.
Yeah.
So you can be a male sex attracted to male while feeling like a woman.
Yeah.
Gender pickle. So these three are kind of all distinct concepts.
Yeah.
Which is what you were covering.
Yeah.
And is gender not neurological necessarily?
Well, I would say this is like cutting edge research. This is what people are doing research on now, like trying to understand, if there's the brain to the extent that it's wired differently among people of different sex, among people of different gender, looking at people who are trans and looking at it before and after they have hormones, taking in hormones. And there is research that suggests that this hormone treatment does change how the brain is wired, which might suggest that, then maybe the brain, this idea of, how you think about yourself is highly related to the brain. Is like, in which case, you could potentially have a body that looks a certain way with the brain that's wired a different way. Maybe that explains, individuals that it's this transgenderism, right? But I guess what I was saying earlier is like, I think it's important to sort of look at these things separately. Sex, sexual characteristics, your biological sex, your chromosomes, your genitals, and gender. I wasn't really necessarily thinking about the brain, but more about gender being understanding these schemas, these understanding of what sex is. So gender behavior, gender norms, descriptive, prescriptive norms, and then sexuality being the orientation, what you look for. And it's, I guess it's frustrating for me to like look at other research or when other people are talking about it and they go back and forth because then I'm confused of what are you talking about. But that might just be me being, I don't know, stubborn.
Yeah. Yeah. Right now, there's a sort of ongoing debate, particularly in America, regarding this sort of stuff, sort of fight trans people. And this is such a silly, I wouldn't even say it's a silly question, it's just a silly question from that conservatives ask. Yes. They're sort of be all and end all gotcha. What is a woman? Right? How would you answer that question? I kind of have an answer to that, which I would give, but how would you answer that?
What is a woman?
Yes.
That's a slick related to trans issues.
It's just like the reason they ask that is because in their mind, if a man can identify as a woman, then what is a woman? And what they've done basically is they've gone around, they've asked people to define what a woman is, and no one can do it. Well, they're asking people on the streets. They're not asking experts.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of interested in your
Hang in this idea. I see. Well, I would say a woman is, this understanding, or this construct of an individual who displays an identity and behavior that is typical of somebody who is female at birth. So that's probably a big.
That's essentially the answer that I would give. What I would give a little bit less scientific because I'm a little bit dumber. It's sort of anybody who resonates with general female sort of societal.
Right, because like when I think of get that question, when I think of woman as being a gender category, which again it was just related but different from sex, like male, female, sex, men, women, gender. Right.
Yeah. If someone asks you what's a biological woman, then I guess you should say 2X. But even then, no, 2X chromosomes would work because I know that in some cases, you can be sort of. I think you can have different chromosomes even if you're a woman. I believe. I'm not sure. There was a name for this.
Yeah, it's intersex or differences of sex.
No. Intersex is specifically when you have sort of both of the kind of gender, sex.
So this concept of difference of sexual development, it's just like anyone who has a biological trajectory that's different from the common path, which is having XX, XY, and the domino effect that comes from that.
Right.
Sorry. Yeah.
No. Finish. I'll continue after this.
And so intersex can involve actually even what is defined as intersex is debated because there are different types of conditions which some people might not call intersex. Just to give an example, congenital adrenal hyperplasia.
Like hyperplasia?
Yeah.
I know what hyperplasia is, but can you?
Congenital adrenal hyperplasia. It's a condition in which essentially what it leads to is an overexposure to androgens because of an overgrown adrenal glands. And there is early onset congenital adrenal hyperplasia and late onset congenital adrenal hyperplasia. And there are different subcategories. I'm going to get into that specific. But when it happens early onset, it happens, even before birth. And what it essentially leads to often is elevated levels of androgens. Something can happen in both males and females. When it happens in males, it's not that noticeable, although it can lead to tumors in the adrenal gland, which of course is important to catch. But it's more noticeable in females because they typically don't have an elevated exposure to androgens, so like testosterone, for example. And so when it happens among females, you have things like more male-typical secondary sexual characteristics. You have fused labias. You have things like enlarged clitoris. Things that people would associate with intersex, right? Something who's female genitalia or male typical. Whereas for individuals who have late onset congenital adrenal hyperplasia, the adrenal glands produce androgens, an excessive level of androgens much later in life. Let's say keep it in your 20s or thereafter. And so when females have late onset congenital adrenal hyperplasia, then the symptoms could lead to male pattern bubbles, for example, or I forget what the other symptoms are. But it doesn't change your genitalia. Your genitalia has already been developed. It is what it is. And so when we're talking about how many people are intersex, the number changes depending on what you consider to be intersex. Is late onset congenital adrenal hyperplasia intersex? Maybe. I mean, if you look at the individual who has that, the female and looks like a typical female, maybe they're more likely to be bald, for example. But their genitalia is typically sex typical. Whereas individuals who are early on, they might have more intermediate, or some people call it vaguely sex genitalia. So
I mean, we could probably continue to discuss this, but I'm kind of scared, to be honest.
my point is that
It's complicated.
it's complicated.
It's very complicated.
It depends on us defining, having clear terms about what is or isn't intersex, and then we have a better understanding.
I think it's really hard to have clear terms when regarding such a complex topic, especially when the brain is involved and there's neurological things.
Yeah. And so, sorry, did you have a question about this? I feel like I just
No. I honestly forgot. I think I was talking about I was talking about women with XY chromosomes.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So that's actually, I checked it. It's called Swyer syndrome. I've heard of it. I've heard of this before. So I forgot what we were talking about before this. To be honest,
What is a woman? I guess.
oh right. I said what would biologically be a woman, and then I said XX chromosomes, but then Swyer syndrome. So I guess anybody who has a female reproductive system.
But even that that's
Is that? I mean,
because let's say you have XY chromosome, as you said earlier. Like what makes XY lead to male typical bodies is specific genes within the Y chromosome, the S or Y gene, that leads to the development, the testes, which leads to the production of testosterone, which has downstream effects on the body. More complicated than that, of course. But you can have situations in which you have a Y chromosome of a gene, for example, within the Y chromosome, the SRY gene isn't expressed. And so without that, you don't have male typical development, and you will default to female typical genital development. So you can have XY chromosomes, but then female typical, to some extent, female typical in or external genitalia. And is that a biological? I mean, it's not for me to say.
it's the easiest thing you can do, but this would be very controversial. Just say there's two things and that there's anomalies. And that would be very, very questionable.
Well, I don't think people like to be called anomalies. Probably. Here's what I'll say. I think things are always more complicated than it seems. But just to bring it all full circle, I think talking about it is the way to go.
Yeah.
Sitting down, having civilized conversations about how we feel about things, where we agree on things. I think that is often beneficial. And I guess not being fixated on having these discrete understanding of things perhaps is good. Perhaps having understanding of things as being usually this way, but not always this way, right? Like if people just relax a little bit on how they conceive the world and how things should be, I think people will be better off for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree with you. I think if people could just come over and discuss things, it would actually solve a lot more issues societal. I think that's their biggest problem is sometimes we just don't listen.
Should we hold hands and start singing? We've come together. So
that would-
real problems.
I wish it was that easy.
I wish.
Yeah.
But it has.
It does. These satire conversations.
Yeah. Even if it's just for the sake of exposure, I think it's good.
Absolutely. So I think we're going to be ending here. Is there any final words you'd like to say? Any social media you'd like to plug at any of your research? Absolutely anything.
Sure. I mean, I barely use social media, so I don't really have any plug. But yeah, man, I'm always happy to have conversation about these things. And thank you for having me. And it was a pleasure chatting with me and letting me speak about myself for whatever I know time would be.
Probably an hour and a half, to be honest.
Hopefully, most of that was intelligible. And I guess if I had to just land on one thing, is what we've been saying. Just sit down, talk about it with your friends and family, if it's safe to do so, of course. I don't know.
With experts, if you can, I guess.
Well, that can help. Not always. Experts can be assholes.
Oh, yeah, that's... Well, I mean, I think it's better to talk with an educated asshole than an uneducated sort of...
No, thank you. I appreciate this. This is fun.
Yeah, it was lovely. Thank you very much. All right.